Okay, everyone, good morning. First things first, let's do what we always do and just throw me a quick note in the chat to let me know that you can hear everything okay. And I'll stand by. Okay, there's that 20 minutes of panic, 20 seconds, sorry, of panic where I ask you if you can hear everything okay, and then I just wait in silence for everything to actually catch up. No, I'm not wearing a suit today. Yes, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, cut me some slack, and I think I just need a little bit of hoodie today. So I think this is the first stream I've ever done on this channel. I think this is the first video I've ever done on this channel where I'm not wearing a suit. Anyway, with that said, welcome to day 2 of the January 6th committee hearings. Thank you for tuning in. It is very important. I know that there are a few people who would love nothing more than for people not to watch. So thank you so much for tuning in. It is monumentally important just getting those numbers up, not just here, but wherever you watch. If you're watching on TV, if you're watching on another channel, thank you for kind of staying engaged and informed about all of this stuff, because I think that, you know, not knowing what's happening is kind of the goal for a bunch of people. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about what I think was the single most important feature of the first day of the January 6th hearings. We heard testimony on day 1 from a number of senior Trump administration officials. We heard testimony from a guy named Alex Cannon, who is Trump's campaign lawyer. We heard testimony from Jason Miller, who's a senior Trump campaign spokesman. Testimony from Bill Barr, from Ivanka Trump. And that testimony was so important. And the reason that the first day started off with these taped depositions from those people, it was so important because all of those people conceded that they told Trump he would lose the election, that there was no fraud, and that they accepted that there was no fraud. Even Ivanka said she accepted it when Bill Barr called these claims of fraud bullshit. So everybody in Trump's orbit, from his lawyers to his spokespeople to his attorney general to his own daughter, all accepted the fact that there was no fraud in this election. And why that was so important was it laid the foundation for everything that followed. So, you know, when he peppered his supporters with the big lie on a daily basis, when he pressured state legislators, when he pressured election officials, when he called Brad Raffensperger and asked him to find 11,780 votes, when he pressured Mike Pence live on stage at the Stop the Steal rally, and ultimately, you know, when he incited his coup attempt. All of that stuff was done despite Trump knowing that he didn't really win, meaning that he knew he was lying, meaning that he did all of this with criminal intent to defraud the United States of America. That was like the genius of starting off the hearings right off the bat with these taped depositions from all these senior Trump administration officials, is that we knew that Trump knew that he had lost because all these people told him he lost. And so the fact that he went out anyway and did all this stuff and pressured these people and spouted the big lie and incited that coup, all of that was done with criminal intent, with corrupt intent, because he knew the truth. He'd already been told it. All these people told him. And of course, Trump will claim that he doesn't believe it, but what prosecutors are going to have to weigh, hopefully what they're weighing right now at the DOJ, is whether his claims of not believing that he lost outweigh all of the evidence that he lost, like the data, the numbers, which prove that he had no path to victory, and also the fact that his senior staff, like I just mentioned, including Alex Cannon, including Jason Miller, including Bill Barr, including Ivanka Trump, all conceded that he had no path to victory. In other words, he can say he didn't believe it as some defense. I mean, you can say anything, right? But whether there's enough evidence, but you know, whether there's enough evidence to actually back that up is highly doubtful, because he was told the truth. I know people are joining right now confused as to why I'm wearing a hoodie. I woke up at 4:30 and it's 5:55 here, so this is me asking for some grace. I just didn't want to wear a shirt and a tie at 5 o'clock in the morning. This is just more comfortable. And I'm my own boss, so I just pick my own wardrobe. That's the perks of the job. Well, it's one of the perks of the job that I've never actually used in, I think, 2,000 videos. So this is me using a perk of the job, creating a perk of the job. By the way, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. I know a lot of people are watching, not only from the U.S. but overseas. I know that there's some people in Maryland. Maryland, in the Netherlands. Yeah, overseas all the way in Maryland. It is early. People are watching from Canada. I'd be very curious to see how many West Coasters have braved the morning hours to join. Anybody out here from the West Coast? From Japan? With people from Toronto, Finland, Germany. Yeah. And we have somebody from the faraway land of Maryland, so that's great. Argentina, the UK, Prague, Switzerland, Spain, Thailand, Singapore, Seattle, North Carolina. Oh, nice. We do have some West Coasters out here. Sweden, Sydney, Tokyo, Vienna. Damn, it is wild. Melbourne, Palm Springs, NorCal, Texas, UAE, Netherlands, Las Vegas, Nebraska, Connecticut, New York. Wow. It's wild. I mean, people are here from everywhere watching this stuff. And that's great. I'm glad that people are so engaged in this stuff. I'm glad that people are paying attention. New Zealand, 1 p.m. in New Zealand. Must be nice. Casual 1 p.m. hearing. Even my dog here didn't get out of bed. He was like, nah. All right. So anyway, with all of that said, let's talk a little bit about, I think the most important thing here is to preface all of this, all of these January 6th hearings with the fact that the entire big lie, the entire idea that there was fraud in this last election wasn't based on anything. There was no evidence of fraud at any point throughout this entire process, since the votes first started being cast till the last vote was counted, till the certification on January 6th. There was no evidence of fraud. They brought forward 60 court cases, and at no point did any judge, including I think 8 Trump-appointed judges, ever concede or say that there was any fraud. They brought it forward to Republicans of state, none of whom said that there was any fraud. They did a bunch of recounts and audits. All of those recounts and audits proved the original counts out. So there was no faulty numbers. Even those recounts, like they did an audit, the fraud it out in Arizona. It was a Republican operative outfit who did that audit. That actually showed that that Joe Biden won more votes than Trump than initially thought in their audit. And their audit's obviously not to be believed, but even like the sham audit bore out this idea that not only did Trump lose, but he actually lost worse than the original count. So I think that's important because obviously they have no evidence of any of the stuff that they're saying that they predicated all of this, insurrection over. And not only do we not have any evidence of fraud, but we actually do have evidence of Trump trying to steal the election. We have his call with Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, where he attempted to ask him to find 11,780 votes. We, of course, know that he invited state legislators to the White House. I believe the Michigan Speaker of the State House was invited out. Again, the whole point of this was in broad daylight to convince these people to send alternate slates of electors. So even though a state like Michigan voted for Joe Biden, he was like, screw it, let's just have them send their own slate of electors, Trump electors, even though they didn't actually win. There was, of course, pressuring Pence. Pence had a solely perfunctory role in just declaring who had won. I mean, Pence can't unilaterally just decide whether or not to accept the certification of the electoral votes. If any vice president of one party had the ability to decide whether or not to accept the victory of the opposing party, I mean, that would just be like, one would think that would be a pretty fundamental flaw in our system. So no, a vice president doesn't have that ability, despite what Trump was saying, to the point where he, was getting his supporters to chant that they wanted to assassinate the guy. His role was solely perfunctory. It was just basically, saying what he had, regurgitating what he had already seen right there. And of course we have John Eastman, Trump's lawyer, who I'm sure we'll hear plenty about during these hearings. His 3 easy steps of how to do a coup memo. We have PowerPoint memos, including one that was done by a guy named Phil Waldron that was to brief members of Congress that they would use the National Guard to seize voting machines. I mean, one step after the next, it was just an avalanche of damning evidence that these guys knew exactly what they were doing, that they were breaking the law every step of the way. And as we know from day one of these hearings, they did it all corruptly because they knew that he actually didn't win the election, that there was no fraud, and that there was no path to victory. Again, that's why it was so important. I think that the January 6th committee did such a good job, methodically laying this out to the point where all of what happened after votes started being cast, between that point and January 6th, everything that happened was done knowing in their minds, knowing in Donald Trump's mind, that what he's doing was a lie, because he was already told by Jason Miller that he couldn't win. He was already told by Alex Cannon that he couldn't win. He was already told by Bill Barr that he couldn't win. Hell, he was told by Ivanka that she respected what Bill Barr said, that he couldn't win. So at no point in any of this was any of this big lie actually to be believed, because Trump knew. He was already told by these people, meaning that everything that he did after that was just complete bullshit. He already knew the truth, and they already laid that out. I mean, these were depositions under oath. These people weren't lying. I'm not gonna risk jail time for Trump during these depositions. They're gonna tell the truth. Of course he knew. Some people are asking what time it starts. It starts in about 55 minutes, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. People are just tuning in right now, still confused about the hoodie. This is my 5:45 in the morning outfit. Don't think I can swing a suit at 5:45 in the morning. A lot of tightness around my neck, a little tie, not worth it. One other thing, so they'll talk to, they'll point out that what Trump was doing was being done corruptly because he knew he knew the truth about this stuff. Also, the people around Trump also didn't believe it. There were a ton of texts to Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, from Republican lawmakers, from members of Fox News, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Brian Kilmeade, like I said, Republican lawmakers. Even Don Jr. was texting Mark Meadows, which, by the way, I think is just kind of funny that Don Jr. needs to get a message to his dad. He has to go through Trump, his dad's chief of staff. But all of these people were texting Mark Meadows. There was an avalanche of texts to Mark Meadows of these people saying that Trump needs to go out and do something. He needs to stop this. He needs to do an address, like an Oval Office address. He's a bunch of Fox hosts that he's destroying the legacy that he built. He's undoing all of this work. He's hurting us, and they would literally use the word us in case there was any doubt as to where Fox, as to the neutrality of Fox News and all of this. And I think what that shows is they knew that Trump was responsible. Because why would they want Trump to denounce it if he had nothing to do with it? Or if these people were Antifa? Why would Antifa listen to Trump if they weren't summoned by him? Of course they knew that all of these insurrectionists were summoned by Trump. That's why they reached out to Mark Meadows to get him to get Trump to make some address to try to get these people to dissipate, because they knew that the only person that these people would listen to was Donald Trump. And so, like, that's the craziness of all this, is these Fox hosts were coming on air afterwards and saying, like, oh, there's a good chance that this was Antifa. There was a good chance that this was some false flag by the FBI, that law enforcement was infiltrating the crowd, that a third of these people, half these people were law enforcement, and they drove people toward the Capitol. I mean, it was just like one bullshit excuse after the other to deflect attention away from Trump. But what's ironic is that while those people were on air claiming that it was Antifa, claiming that it was law enforcement, claiming that it was the FBI, they were also texting Mark Meadows saying Trump has to do something to get these people out of here, because they knew that it wasn't Antifa or the FBI. And if they really did think that it was Antifa, why would they need Trump so badly to go on air to make an address to get these people to go away? Do you think that Antifa was actually going to listen to Donald Trump? It's like, oh, well, Trump's out here saying that we can go home, so even though we are Antifa, guess we have no choice but to listen. Come on, boys, wrap it up. Like, come on, these people knew the truth. It was obvious. I think another big theme of these hearings that we'll hear about is that, yes, accountability is monumentally important, but this is also about securing our elections for the future, and that January 6th wasn't a one-off. It was a blueprint for next time, and in fact, they've fixed a lot of the problems that prevented them from moving forward with actually stealing this last election. They've since allowed for Republicans to take over local elections boards in Georgia. That was Georgia's voter suppression law, SB 202, allowed Republicans to take over local elections boards, and they've done it with a number of local elections boards already. Democratic-run elections boards have been taken over by Republicans. Now they're Republican-run, and a lot of those Republican members on these elections boards are actually people who denied the legitimacy of the last election. So these are dangerous people who are in charge of this thing right now. And the whole point is to embed enough people in the fabric of our government administration's roles to ensure that, if a Democrat dares win the next election, that it'll be as hard as possible, if not impossible, to actually allow these people to have their victories. Of course, they're running election deniers in a number of swing states, including Michigan and Arizona. They're running, people in these Secretary of State's roles. That's why it's not just that's why midterms are so important, because these are going to be the people, whether it's in Congress, whether it's, the House or the Senate, which will then determine in 2024 whether they allow these bullshit shenanigans that occurred in 2020 to move forward. If Republicans have control of any of these chambers, they'll make it monumentally difficult for any Democrat to actually have their win. All the way down to these smaller roles, these elections boards. That's where a lot of the power actually lies. Of course, Congress currently is working on bipartisan legislation to fix some of these issues, like the issue of being able to send alternate slates of electors, but it remains to be seen whether Republicans would actually vote for something like that. We actually just saw a framework emerge on gun legislation with 10 Republicans, and that didn't, we'll talk about that in a few moments, but all of that is to say there is a faction of moderate, and I say that with the smallest M on moderate humanly possible. This is moderate by today's standards, where we have a mostly authoritarian faction of the Republican Party leading half of our government. So, but we have a bunch of bipartisan senators working right now to fix a bunch of these, to stave off some of these issues, to fix the issue of alternate slates of electors and some other loopholes that the Trump campaign was able to exploit in the last election. But it remains to be seen whether Republicans will actually vote for it. We haven't seen any text of any bill, so, stand by on that. If anything comes forward, of course, I'll cover it. I'll take a minute now, just to regroup for a second. The hearing starts in about 45 minutes. If you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat. I'll try to answer the questions. And good morning to people just tuning in. I appreciate you taking the time. waking up today? Have I had breakfast yet? This is my breakfast right here. I don't actually think I could even eat this early. Yeah, somebody, Johnny Doe says, why would Antifa protest their president winning? It's true, like, why would Antifa have any reason that they want to protest if Joe Biden won? It's like we did it! Let's burn this place down! Like, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's so many reasons why that's the dumbest excuse on the face of the earth, but yes. One good question, I guess, why would Antifa protest if Joe Biden won? When do the hearings start? They start in about 45 minutes at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Someone said that CNN is reporting a delay. Let me see if I could find any information on that. One quick sec. I just let my dog out. Okay, let me see if I can find anything on a delay. I haven't read anything about that. Okay, there is going to be a delay. About 30 minutes after the previously announced start time. So, it was supposed to start at 10 o'clock Eastern. It's looking like it'll start at about 10:30. I'll keep streaming anyway, so hang with me here. Due to a family emergency, Bill Stepien, who was, I believe, Trump's campaign manager, is unable to testify before the select committee this morning. His counsel will appear and make a statement on the record. That's convenient that Trump's campaign manager isn't able to appear. The hearing will convene approximately 30 to 45 minutes after the previously announced 10 a.m. start time. So there will be a slight delay. The committee does have his testimony on tape, so I'm sure that we'll hear some version of that today. Other people that we'll hear today are a guy named Chris Stirewalt, who's a former Fox political editor. We'll hear from a guy named Benjamin Ginsburg, who's an election attorney. B.J. Pack, who's a former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. And Al Schmidt, who is that Republican Philadelphia commissioner who ultimately, I believe, left his post because he was like, screw this. My party's insane. He was getting like death threats. The guy's a Republican. He was getting death threats for daring acknowledge that Trump won. Somebody asked if I could turn my volume up a little bit louder. Yes, I can. Please let me know if this is better. Happy to make it louder still. Will there be a day when an election is decided by the popular vote? Unlikely in this country. We have something called the National Popular Vote Contract, but it requires a majority of states to sign on to it. Doesn't look like that's going to happen because the Republican Party benefits from not having a popular vote, obviously. I can't remember the last time. I believe, Republicans have won the popular vote, one time out of the last 8 elections, half of which they were able to win using the Electoral College. For people joining, yes, the panic over no suit continues, but this is the grace that I'm giving myself because I started streaming at 5:45 in the morning. So this is the casual version. Yeah, somebody just pointed out Bush in 2004 was the last time a Republican won the popular vote. So almost 20 years ago. Okay, let's talk about some of what we heard from the first. I just want to go over a little bit of what we heard from the first impeachment hearing. The first January 6th committee hearing. The most important part from that hearing is that they began with these tape depositions, and I apologize if people heard this because when I first started out this stream, this is what I spoke about as well. But we have a lot more people here, so I just want to reiterate this kind of stuff. What the smartest part for these people was, what the smartest part for the committee, what they did so well was they started off these hearings with tape depositions from Trump campaign spokespeople, from Trump lawyers. We had Alex Cannon, who was the campaign lawyer. We had Jason Miller, who was the campaign spokesman. We have Bill Barr, who had been his attorney general, and we had Ivanka Trump, among others, all who conceded that they had told Trump he would lose the election and that there was no fraud, and that they even accepted that there was no fraud. Of course, Ivanka in her deposition said that she was told by Bill Barr and that she respected Bill Barr and she accepted his position. So what that tells you is that all of the people in Trump's orbit knew that there was no fraud and that there was no path to victory for him, which means that Trump knew that there was no fraud and that there was no path to victory for him. They all testified under oath that they told him that there was no path to victory for him. So what they did was lay the foundation for the fact that he knew the truth because he was told the truth. He was told the truth by Jason Miller. He was told the truth by Alex Cannon, his lawyer. He was told the truth by Bill Barr. He was even, ostensibly told the truth by his own daughter. Which shows that all of what followed, all of the big lie on a daily basis, all of the, peppering these state legislators, all of these peppering Mike Pence as vice president, all of these, inciting the insurrection on the Capitol that day on January 6th, all of that was done knowing in his mind that he didn't actually win the election. And so I think that's so important because it shows that he had corrupt intent. He had criminal intent. He knew the truth, and yet he made the conscious decision to defraud not only his supporters that day at the Capitol, but the American people. They showed through these taped depositions that he knew the truth. He was actually well aware of the fact that he lost, that he had no path to victory, that the numbers didn't support his claims. So he made the conscious decision, the corrupt decision, to actually move forward with all of these lies anyway, to incite these lies anyway. Tweeted, "Be there on January 6th will be wild." He did that knowing full well that he lost, that there was no path to victory for him. And of course, Trump will claim that he believed that he won the election, but that's, a claim that flies in the face of the numbers, the data, none of which actually supported his claim, and it flies in the face of what his own officials were telling him. Again, Alex Cannon, Jason Miller, Bill Barr, Ivanka Trump, all told him the truth. And so for him to come forward and claim that he believed he won, what actually supports that claim other than his deepest hopes and desires? But none of the people around him actually had any evidence that he won. None of the numbers that he was looking at had any evidence that he won. Like I said today, we're going to hear from somebody who worked at Fox. I'm assuming these are people who he called and chewed out because they rightfully called the election for Joe Biden. I'm sure that we'll hear plenty about that and plenty about the fact that they gave him, just like we heard from Barr and Ivanka and Miller and Cannon, just like we heard from all of those people, that there was plenty of evidence to support the fact that he lost this election. I'm sure that we'll hear, when these Fox elections analysts gave him that information that he lost and they had to call the election for Joe Biden, what with Joe Biden having won the election, that they were chewed out, and then when they it's going to prove the exact same thing, that they gave him the evidence that he needs to know that he didn't win the election and that he didn't care, that he discarded all of it. What we're going to see from this committee is twofold. It's going to be all of these people proving that Trump knew that he was lying because they keep telling him that he was lying. We're going to see more taped depositions from senior Trump administration officials. We're going to hear from representatives for Bill Stepien today. It's a shame that we can't hear from Stepien himself, but a representative from Bill Stepien who also ostensibly is going to be able to say that they told Trump that he lost the election. We're going to hear from these Fox analysts who called the race for Joe Biden. They're going to be able to say that they told him. So one person after the next, the committee is just going to keep bringing this sand to the beach, keep laying it on thicker and thicker and thicker, the fact that Trump knew that he lost, that he was told he lost time and time and time again, and yet opted to move forward with the big lie anyway. We're going to hear that, and we're going to hear, the devastating impacts of that lie, the consequences of that lie, the violence, how much Trump knew, how involved he was, how much he was aware of these far-right white nationalist militia groups like the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, that they were coming to cause violence. I mean, there was There was some preview in a video clip in the last committee hearing where Trump supporters were well aware of the violence that was going to occur that day. They said, just keep watching. Something's going to happen today. You'll see. We saw a ton of people say stuff like that. This stuff was coordinated. They had conspired long. It wasn't just random spurts of violence. This was coordinated violence. So we're going to find out just how much Trump was involved in that as well. But just the incitement itself. Forget about all of the conspiring, the seditious conspiracy. Forget about all the conspiring to actually create, this violence on January 6th. Forget about all that. Just him peppering the big lie. Just him pressuring these state legislators. Just him pressuring Mike Pence. Just him bringing these people to the Capitol. Just his involvement right there was all done corruptly, with corrupt intent, because he knew that he didn't win. And if somebody made a good point, Ash made a good point. With all of that evidence, if he's still claiming ignorance to that fact, that means he's mentally unstable. Like, if he's still going to claim ignorance, even though all of his numbers and all of his data prove that he lost, and all of his people told him that he lost, at what point are we gonna just accept the fact that this guy was then living in a fair? If he's gonna keep claiming beyond anything that the evidence actually said that he won this election, then he's not actually operating in a place of reality. He's if the whole world is telling you 2 + 2 is 4, and the numbers, when you weigh them out in their math equations, say 2 + 2 is 4, and all the people around you say 2 + 2 is 4, then at some point, if you're just gonna still claim that it's 27, then we're talking about somebody who, like you said, is mentally unstable. Somebody asked when this starts. We're looking at about, I would assume, roughly an hour from now. Looking at roughly an hour start time from now. Anyway, I've done a recap here of day one and why I think how they approached this whole hearing was really well done, methodical, smart, perfectly laid out. So if you have questions that you want me to answer, I can take a break from these recaps and jump into questions right now. Somebody asked, consequences when? Because I swear it feels like there will not be any consequences. I know, I agree. I feel the same way. I spoke with Dan Pfeiffer for my podcast this week, and if anybody's looking for a podcast to listen to, I would recommend subscribing to mine. Is No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those platforms. I spoke with Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America. He was also Obama's communications director, and I asked him, I was like, do you think that, I was like, I know that you didn't work in the Justice Department, but he was a high-level advisor to Obama. Do you think that the DOJ is moving too slowly, or is this an appropriate speed given what this is? And he was like, I'm not so concerned about the speed. I know everybody is like, when's Merrick Garland going to do this? When are we going to see some movement on this thing? I'm not so concerned about the speed, but rather the outcome. That's my top priority, is making sure that we see the outcome that we want, regardless of whether it's Monday or Friday or 4 weeks from now or 2 months from now. Whatever it is, obviously, you and I all want to see this happen quickly, because, dear God, it's been so long, and it feels like there's not going to ever be any accountability. But he was less concerned about the speed. Also, the fact that they are moving forward with this investigation is in and of itself a sign showing that they're taking this seriously, that they think that they're going to win this case, because the DOJ doesn't take up cases it thinks it's going to lose. Obviously, the orbit is getting closer and closer to Trump, and also obviously it's hard not to look at this and be like, how long could this take? This is the most open, shut, cut and dry case that we've seen. But I mean, look, clearly getting closer and closer to him. So I'm going to reserve my harshest judgment for when we actually see some type of result from this DOJ investigation. Hopefully, we see an indictment soon, but that's kind of the whole stance on that. Yes, we lost the campaign manager. We were supposed to see Bill Stepien. Somebody asked, did we lose the campaign manager? Yes, but we were supposed to see Bill Stepien testify today. We're getting a representative from him instead. I believe that they also have a tape deposition from him, so we'll still hear from him, I believe. Don't quote me on that, though. Will the DOJ act on findings from the committee? I'm sure the DOJ and the committee are working hand in glove. I'm sure that the DOJ is using a bunch of testimony, depositions from the committee. I'm certain that the DOJ is able to use a lot of what this committee is finding. I mean, this committee is not able to charge. The whole point of this committee is fact-finding. You can't hand down any indictments from the January 6th committee. This is all informational. It's just all for our knowledge. And so the whole point of this committee is really to lend itself to the DOJ's investigation and to enter into the public record what we know, so that people are involved too. I mean, like, our pressure is having an impact on what the DOJ will do. Just the pressure of all of us knowing the truth about what happened and calling for something to happen, calling for some accountability. I interviewed Glenn Kirshner a couple weeks ago, and he said pressure like this bursts pipes. So that's why it's so important that people like you guys watching is important. You guys being, whether it's on this channel or whether it's watching on TV, or just knowing this stuff, that kind of being able to put that pressure on these people who are doing this investigation is helpful. Will this go anywhere this time? Laura asks, will it go anywhere this time? If Trump isn't indicted, then why have this? Look, I think the whole point is that there are people who are working to make sure that there is accountability. If Trump isn't indicted, yeah, I agree. If Trump isn't indicted, the DOJ is not only going to have failed us when it comes to January 6th, but it's also going to fail us in terms of emboldening these people just to do it again. And it's not like they won't. It's not like the wheels aren't currently in motion right now. I mean, like I said, about 10-15 minutes ago, Republicans have already sought to fix a bunch of the problems that stopped them from stealing the last election. They've already passed laws like SB 202 in Georgia that allowed them to replace Democratic-run local elections boards with Republicans onto those boards. They're pushing big lie candidates in a bunch of these elections. Doug Mastriano, the Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania, is running on a platform of regardless of who wins in Pennsylvania, he's not gonna sign any certification for Joe Biden, for the Democrat, whoever runs in 2024. He's only going to allow Republican electors to move forward. That's what these people are overtly running on. So this idea that the DOJ would not do anything is not only giving Trump a free pass, it's not only giving all of these people a free pass who inspired the events of January 6th, but who are seeking right now to do the exact same thing in 2022, 2024, and beyond. So yes, that would be a massive, massive missed opportunity and major loss and probably death knell to democracy if the DOJ doesn't act. Can a former president be fully charged, or are they still under the OLC protection? Yeah, former president can be charged. It's only that OLC protection that purports to say that it's just guidance that says that the president can't be charged, the sitting president can't be charged, but that's not in statute. That's not a law. But they operate under that idea anyway. In any case, a former president, of course, can be charged. Now, this idea, of course, that Trump pardoned himself, Trump very likely issued himself a pocket pardon. Whether a pardon will insulate or protect himself from criminal activity while he was president would, of course, be challenged by any court, and unlikely that anything like that would hold up in court. I mean, you couldn't conspire to defraud the United States of America and then pardon yourself in illegal activity and expect that to hold up. I'm sure he issued pardons not only to himself, but all of those people in his orbit as well. We know from the committee last week that Republican lawmaker Scott Perry asked Trump for a pardon. We also have past reporting from CNN that Mo Brooks, Andy Biggs, and Paul Gosar also requested pardons. If that's accurate, that's another 3 Republican lawmakers. I like that this past week, AOC went onto Twitter and asked Matt Gaetz if he requested a pardon from Trump, because he was, Matt Gaetz had come out and said that Jamie Raskin couldn't faithfully execute his duties as a member of the January 6th committee because he's too influenced, too colored by the fact that his son had passed away. I mean, it was like the most vile, depraved, reprehensible thing he could have said, to take a shot at Jamie Raskin while his that he's unable to fulfill his duties because his son had passed away, which is absurd and fitting for Matt Gaetz. But AOC tweeted, just like smacking him around a little bit, and Matt Gaetz and her got into this little Twitter spat, and she was like, "Oh, since you know where the reply button is, did you ask Trump for pardon?" And you wouldn't believe it, but Matt Gaetz miraculously stopped responding to AOC after she posed the question, "Did you ask Trump for a pardon?" So I think that's pretty telling, and I don't doubt for a second that there's going to be other Republican lawmakers who've also sought pardons. I know one thing that was interesting from Scott Perry is he came forward and was like, the notion that I would ever request a pardon from the former president is a soulless lie. But Liz Cheney in last week's hearing was like, her exact words were, "As you will see," and then she went on to say the Republican members of Congress, Scott Perry, requested a pardon. She said, "As you can see," like, of course they have the receipts. Of course they have proof. You think that all of the work they've done and making sure all of their T's were crossed and all of their I's were dotted, every single ounce of work that they've poured into this committee for months and months and months, working hand in glove with the DOJ, interviewing over 1,000 people, reading into over, tens and tens and tens of thousands of documents, poring over all this stuff, that they're going to stake the entire reputation on this committee on just some real casual lie that Scott Perry requested a pardon and didn't actually deserve one, or didn't actually request one, rather. Like, of course they have the receipts. Of course, if Liz Cheney and this committee say that Scott Perry requested a pardon from Trump, that they have some proof to back it up. The idea that they're just gonna like I said, stake their entire reputation of this committee on a lie is just. I think Scott Perry is going to be in for a rude awakening. I think he will have probably the worst aged tweet that we will have seen in recent time. Not that matters, because these people can say, "Oh, that's a lie," and their supporters are going to watch Newsmax and OAN and Fox, and they're going to get their news directly from these people, and so no one's ever going to push back on it. So even if we hear today or Wednesday or at some subsequent hearing that, in fact, here's the proof that Scott Perry requested a pardon, a lot of those people Scott Perry is banking on, and rightfully so, are not going to actually see that proof. And so I think that's the disadvantage, that's the danger, those are the risks of having these like completely separate ecosystems. That's why, for these videos, like, I do hope that I reach a lot of independents, and it's not just, I hope that it's not some echo chamber. I know that it's important to reach people who are willing to seek out information that's not just, from their own side. How could any of the pardons Trump granted legally hold up when he was the leader of the coup? Any of Trump's pardons likely wouldn't hold up. I don't think you can commit a crime and then pardon, it would be completely it would run completely counter to any laws in this country. They would very unlikely hold up in any court. If the DOJ charges Trump, can a Republican president pardon him and Trump runs again? I believe that depending on the charge that would be brought down, certain charges would include a ban from running for federal office. So I don't think that they can undo a ban from running for office just with a pardon. If a Republican did win and did pardon him, I don't think they could undo the ban. But that's a good question, and I would when I speak to I'm sure that the next interview I have with Jamie Raskin, that'd be a good question to ask. And that will be one of my first one of my first interview attempts as soon as this is over. Should the President of the U.S. be held to a higher standard in terms of his behavior rather than a lower one in that regards? That's concerning like the OLC guidance, that a president can't be charged while he's in office. Yes. Should. Will the DOJ share the mountains of evidence of election fraud across the nation? I'm not sure what the DOJ would show. A lot of what that evidence is what we're seeing right now with this committee. That's like the beauty of this committee. If the DOJ is working hand in glove, if the DOJ is using a lot of the information that the January 6th committee brings forward, this is us seeing it. Like this is the case being laid out. That's the beauty of this committee, is that we're not going to hear any of this stuff from the DOJ. The only way that we're able to hear any of it is just thanks to this committee doing these public hearings. And by the way, it's important for people watching not just to consume this stuff, but if you see clips that you think are effective, post them yourself. Make sure that your circle and your extended people all are able to see this stuff. I think that's like especially important as well. It's not just like, you are not the end user. I think anybody watching here is not the end user. Like, you have the ability to be messengers for your own people, for your own extended networks who aren't watching this stuff. So I think if you see a clip that's especially effective, if you have, there were a ton of clips from the first hearing that were especially effective. You have Ivanka Trump herself saying that she accepted what Bill Barr was saying when he called Trump's claims of a stolen election bullshit, when he called Trump's fraud claims bullshit. You had Ivanka Trump herself say she respects Bill Barr and she accepted what he was saying. You think that that's not effective for Trumplandia? Even Bill Barr himself saying that he believed that Trump's claims of election fraud were bullshit. That's an effective clip. Anybody who shared that, you shouldn't just be the end user. It's not, it's not just, we have the ability to share all this stuff. So post it on Facebook, post it on Twitter. I would say post it on Truth Social, but I've actually seen a lot of reports from people who were posting about January 6th, the January 6th hearing on Truth Social, and their accounts were just getting banned left and right. So free speech, except for speech that is mildly inconvenient to their narrative, which I think is so funny. And somebody said they only have 5 subscribers, and that's okay, because it's those small networks that are still important. And this is just a quick aside. I think the most effective and important tool that we have moving into this next election is going to be individual people being able to reach out to their circles. Like, even me doing what I do, if I reach 20 or 30 or 40 million people a month, what I do is so much less effective than just an individual person reaching out to their circle, to their family member who doesn't vote, for example, to their friend who thinks that, they're more of a moderate and so these issues don't really impact them. A daughter or a son who might have just turned 18 or 19 or 20. That is going to be so much more effective than me screaming into the ether. Hopefully what I do is able to reach some degree of people. Hopefully, me doing this on a daily basis, at least keeps some people informed or brings people into the political process. But you being able to reach out to a friend or a parent or a aunt or an uncle or a kid is going to be so much more effective than what I do. And so my whole thing has always been, find a few people in your circle and convince them to vote, persuade them to vote, make sure that they're registered to vote, make sure that they have a plan for election day. That's it. Find 2-3 people, and that's your responsibility. 2 people who didn't vote. If everybody did that, we're talking about elections that are won by 40,000 votes in just a few states. That's the difference in these elections. So, for people that don't have big followings, that's okay. That doesn't matter. The answer here isn't to find influencers to change the election results. Although I think having athletes and musicians and actors and reach out to younger audiences especially is super important. But you have so much power, and I know everybody has somebody in their life who doesn't vote. I do. I think if you're able to reach those people, that will be the most effective tool. When I was talking to Dan Pfeiffer for this week's podcast episode, he said we don't have to, he even acknowledged we don't have to get any Trump supporters to support Democrats in this next election. We just have to make sure we turn out as many of the Democrats. who came out in 2022. So I think that's important. Like, this isn't an insurmountable task. We don't have to flip anybody who's like one of these, we don't have to like reach out to like these stop the steal insurrectionists and get them to vote for Joe Biden. We just have to turn out the people who we know will vote and bring new people into the process who might not be interested in politics, but who might be impacted by Republicans stripping women of their bodily autonomy, who might be impacted by gun violence in this country. You can be a parent who doesn't give a shit about politics right now, but if you're scared to send your kid to school because anybody can get their hands on an AR-15 in this country, then politics impacts you. And there's only one party that's going to work to make sure that an 18-year-old can't get their hands on that weapon. If you have a daughter or a niece or a girlfriend or a wife, or just care about women's bodily autonomy and you want women to have the choice of what they do with their own body, then politics impacts you. A lot of these are foundational issues. This is what we should be paying attention to, and like, these far supersede the regular political bullshit issues that we hear about so often. Migrant caravans, every single election cycle is the same thing. I know that we do have serious issues with the prices of gas, the prices of inflation. These are global issues that everybody is contending with across the globe. But the issues of gun violence, of women's reproductive health, of voting rights, these are all foundational issues. Nothing changes without these things. This impacts everybody's lives. So if you're able to reach like a small faction of people, just, 2-3 people in your circle, that's so much more effective than what I do, in my opinion. Why won't the Republican Party put more preventative measures in their gun talks? You would think that passing preventative measures would actually help them, because it would stop this constant vilification of like the Second Amendment. But it's because their only goal is to kowtow to the gun lobbyists who donate to their campaigns, and gun lobbyists don't want any restrictions on guns, because any restrictions make it more difficult for them to sell guns. That is their only goal. The gun lobby wants more guns, because that's the way to make more money. And so if that means keeping these problems top of mind, keeping these shootings happening so that you can then arm the teachers, arm cashiers, arm priests, arm rabbis, arm anyone and everyone, arm these security guards, arm whoever it is, in every different like setting in American culture and life and society, that's what they want to do. So like, passing preventative measures stops us from being able to say, and like if the shootings diminish or go down, then we won't be able to say, we should arm every teacher in the school, which is what they want, because that would just allow them to sell more guns and like kind of exacerbate this culture of like the only way to protect yourself. This country is so dangerous that the only way to protect yourself is if you have a weapon. And so if you work in a school, you're going to need a gun. If you're an administrator, you're going to need a gun. If you work in a grocery store, you're going to need a gun. If you work in a church, in a synagogue, in any house of worship, if you work at a concert, in a hotel, in a casino, wherever you are, you're going to need a gun. And that is what the gun lobby wants, because that is the only way to sell more weapons. And so they don't want any of these preventative measures. They don't want these red flag laws that would stop these dangerous people who we know are dangerous because their family and their friends came forward and alerted law enforcement that this person poses a unique risk. People that we know are the ones who will likely commit these mass shootings. They won't even pass that, because that would infringe upon their ability to keep this country scared enough that everybody will buy a weapon. That's what they want. This is about making money. They want the mass shootings to continue so that they can continue making money and telling you that you need to buy a weapon. That is the only way to keep yourself safe in this country. It is all about the money. And if you look, Republicans have been donated to the tune of $971,000 just this cycle alone. 204 Republicans, I think, have gotten donations from the gun lobby. 4 Democrats have gotten donations. That's not absolving those 4 Democrats, but man. Again, the witnesses that we'll hear from today are, it was supposed to be Bill Stepien, Trump's campaign manager, he said he had a family emergency, which is convenient. So we'll hear from a representative from him. We'll hear from a guy named Chris Stirewalt, who is a former Fox political editor. We'll hear from Benjamin Ginsburg, who's an election attorney. B.J. Pack, who's a former U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Georgia. And Al Schmidt, who is a Philadelphia city commissioner, I believe a Republican who was like chased out of his job because a bunch of lunatics couldn't cope with the fact that he dared certify the election results for Trump. Denise asked to discuss Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments that the committee is defaming the GOP by way of these hearings. The GOP defamed itself by virtue of engaging in all of this stuff. Like, it's not defamation to talk about the lies that you brought. Like, this is a fact-finding mission. There are Republicans on this committee. The idea that this is defamation by just bringing this stuff. If you think that you're being defamed by virtue of the committee speaking the truth and bringing forward facts and doing like taped depositions under oath from these people, then that says a lot more about your own consciousness of guilt than anything else. It's like these people are relaying exactly what these Republicans told Donald Trump, or what the numbers told him. If you think that's defaming you, then that shows just how then that speaks volumes. That says everything. Random Jen asked, am I going to need a cup of coffee to stay awake all night from this? It's already 10 p.m. for me. I don't think that this committee will go terribly, this hearing will go terribly long. I believe it'll probably be like in the ballpark of an hour and a half. So you'll probably be okay by midnight if you are in, well, actually, I'm not sure where it's 10 p.m. Let's find out. Kuala Lumpur? I'm not sure. But, try to make sure that it doesn't go too long. Is Brad Raffensperger going to testify? I believe Brad Raffensperger will be testifying. He won't be testifying today, but I believe that we will be hearing from Brad Raffensperger. That'll be an effective testimony because, of course, we know that Trump asked him on a phone call to find 11,780 votes, which was exactly one more vote than he lost by, which would be so... I mean, like, if you want to avoid the appearance of corruption, you would think maybe not miraculously finding exactly one more vote than you lost by would be a good place to start. How do you explain the serendipity of like finding exactly just one more vote than you needed? But I guess, you know, the point wasn't actually optics, because none of this is actually good optics. I think the point was just to do whatever possible, no matter how corrupt it looks, no matter how corrupt it seems, to just win. That's it. I mean, it was like spitting in the face of the idea of fairness. Spitting in the face of the idea that he's even trying to give the appearance of any legitimacy to his claims, that he wanted to just, like, not even like a couple thousand more votes, not even like 100 more votes. He wanted just one. He wanted to rub it in the face of everybody who even was trying to like make this a legitimate election. Will this do any good? Is this anything more than performative? It seems a lost cause at this point. I think there are two things. One, the pressure that the DOJ will feel by virtue of all these people talking about this, all these people seeing all this irrefutable evidence that Trump knew exactly what he was doing, that he was told that there was no path to victory for him, that he was told that he had lost this election and yet moved to incite this insurrection anyway. All this pressure is being felt by the DOJ. It can't not be. It's not. The DOJ is moving forward with their investigation anyway, but bringing this stuff out into the forefront, bringing it into the public, will only increase that pressure. That's why it's important that people watch. Even those of us who know that January 6th was incited by Trump and it was there was criminal intent behind it, even all of us who know that, just bringing this to the forefront, talking about this, making sure that this is like in the like top of mind in the political universe right now, is being felt by these people. So it's not just that pressure that DOJ is feeling, but also, I mean, what we're seeing right now in terms of people understanding what happened is important. I mean, we have not to like make this like a political issue for us, but like this is a political issue right now, and having more people who might not know or remember what happened on January 6th and giving them all the facts about what happened on January 6th shows those people what's at stake in the next election. And I think that's important. So like, it might seem like a lost cause, but the DOJ is still working on this, and we are expecting to see something handed down by the DOJ as they continue to work their way up toward Trump. And we know that he's a subject of their investigation because people have been asked for information relating to Trump, these Trump officials. So yes, I think that these hearings are monumentally important. And like I said before, you're not necessarily, the people watching this shouldn't just be the end users. I mean, you have the ability to share this stuff with your networks too, and I would highly recommend that you do, because there are people, besides the people who are going to wake up at 5 o'clock Pacific to watch these hearings, there are people who are going to be watching it who are part of your networks who aren't otherwise exposed to politics. And if we can just show a few more people what's at stake, not just with with this stuff related to protecting democracy, but more broadly, all of it, whether it's common sense gun safety reforms or women's reproductive rights, all of it is important. So like, share this stuff to your people. If you can persuade one more person who wouldn't have gone to vote to actually show up, then it's worth it. I know a lot of people are tuning in right now. The hearing was supposed to begin a few minutes ago. It's delayed slightly. We expect a 30-minute delay, so we're looking at about 25 minutes out. So if you're here right now, waiting for this hearing to begin, it will begin shortly. So stay here. In the meantime, please subscribe to this channel if you're not yet subscribed. I see a big influx of people has just joined as we wait for these hearings to begin. So please subscribe, and that is the best way to support me. So if you want to see not only this hearing but subsequent hearings as they continue to move forward, you'll get that information here. So make sure to subscribe. Yes, people are asking, is there a delay? There is a slight delay, about 30 minutes. So those should start in about 25 minutes. What I think is great is there's almost 10,000 people on this stream right now. I think a lot of the Republican Party was banking on people not watching. The primary hearings, the first hearing rather, day one of the January 6th hearings, I had like 16,000 people on the stream. Almost as many people right now during the day, and that was a primetime hearing. Almost as many people watching these now. People just tuning in, also seeing that I'm not wearing a suit. Yes, I woke up very early for this. I needed to be comfortable. So this is 5 a.m. stream attire. This is that uniform. Just want to go over what I think was the most effective approach from day one of the hearings, what I think was the smartest thing the January 6th committee was able to do from day one. I apologize for people that have been with me since the very beginning, because you'll be hearing this again. But for the new people who've joined in, I think what was so brilliant about what the committee members did on day one is they started off their committee hearing with testimony, taped deposition from a bunch of senior Trump administration officials, and that included Alex Cannon, who was Trump's campaign lawyer, Jason Miller, who was the campaign spokesman, Bill Barr, who was the former attorney general, and even someone like Ivanka Trump. And they all conceded that they told Trump that he would lose the last election and there was no fraud, and that they accepted that there was no fraud. And so why I think that was so important was that they laid the foundation for everything that followed. You know, for peppering his supporters with the big lie on a daily basis, and pressuring state legislators, and pressuring elections officials like Brad Raffensperger, pressuring Mike Pence live on that January 6th stage, and ultimately inciting a coup attempt. All of that stuff was done despite Trump knowing that he didn't really win. Meaning that he knew he was lying, meaning that he did all of this with criminal intent to defraud the people of this country. So I think that was like the smartest part for them, was starting off that committee hearing and laying that foundation that these people had already come forward, the people in Trump's orbit, his inner circle, all of these top level administration officials, telling Trump that there was no way he won. They laid that out right off the bat. So everything that we're going to see from this committee following is going to be knowing that he was already told that he had lost. So when we find out how much Trump knew with regard to the actual insurrection itself and what these far-right white nationalist militia groups were doing in terms of coordinating, what these other Republican lawmakers do, how they were coordinating, how much violence they expected, all of this was done with Trump having known that he lost. And so he knew he was lying because all of these people told him, because none of the numbers actually bore that out. And of course, Trump's going to claim that he didn't believe it, that he just truly believed that he won this election. But what prosecutors are going to have to weigh, hopefully what they're weighing right now at the DOJ, is whether his claims of believing that he won the last election will outweigh all of the evidence that he lost. And that includes the numbers and the data, and also the fact that his entire inner circle was telling him in his ear, you lost the last election. There's no evidence of fraud. So that's going to be a difficult to impossible task for him, because he did all this stuff corruptly, knowing that he lost, and yet he still opted to do it anyway. And of course, besides all of that, we have what we knew publicly. Besides just Trump, besides just now what we're getting the information on Trump's officials whispering in his ear that he lost the last election, despite the data and the numbers showing that he lost the last election. There's also what we knew publicly, which is that when they brought these fraud claims forward in court, more than 60 cases in court, including to a number of Trump-appointed judges, all of them were struck down. There wasn't a single fraud case where they won. Not a single fraud case. When they brought these cases in front of Republican secretaries of state, none of them accepted them. Everything was thrown out. Republican governors, all of it was thrown out. When they did recounts and audits to try to show that the counts were off in these states, not a single one of these recounts or audits, and sometimes they did 2, 3, 4 recounts and audits, not a single one changed the result from the initial counts, other than 2 or 3 votes, whatever, normal disparity in these kind of things. So any way you cut it, whether Trump knew that he lost this election because he couldn't win in the courts, he couldn't win with these elected officials, when he couldn't win with these administration officials, when he had his senior staff telling him that he lost this election, his family members telling him that he lost this election, any way you cut it, Trump knew all of this time that he had lost. And so everything he did subsequently, all of the efforts to pepper his supporters with the big lie on a daily basis, he knew already that he had lost and that he was lying. He did this corruptly, with corrupt intent. He conspired to defraud the American people. When he was inviting those state legislators to the White House, the state Senate president to the White House for Michigan, he did that knowing already that he lost. He was defrauding the American people. When he was pushing Pence, whose role was solely perfunctory in all of this, to somehow unilaterally change the election results, he did that already knowing that he lost, because he was seeking to defraud the American people. That's why I think what we saw, that testimony, those taped depositions from day one, was so important, because it established these facts that everything that Trump did afterwards was all knowing that he had already lost. Anyway, you can throw questions. I'll try to answer questions from the chat too. Can Fox hide forever? Fox is going to have a very difficult time if their whole talking point is that nobody's watching these hearings, when they had 20 million viewers in the first hearing, and that was just on the Nielsen ratings. That didn't include any of these internet or stream. I mean, I had almost 250,000 people watch on my stream the first hearing, and I know I wasn't the only one. Somebody's asking where the suit is. This is my uniform when I wake up at 4:45 to start streaming. This is the one piece of grace I gave myself. I was like, I just don't want to wear a tie at 5 o'clock in the morning. Will this committee help toward eliminating the Electoral College? No, this committee won't do that. Eliminating the Electoral College is going to be a heavy lift. We have something called the National Popular Vote Compact, but a majority of states need to approve it, and they haven't. And Republican states won't, because the Electoral College actually benefits them it gives outsized influence to smaller states. So ABC is reporting that Bill Stepien's wife went into labor. I bet he's like, thank God. It's like, that baby saved me. Okay, so we should theoretically be about 15 minutes out. I'm going to grab a quick drink of water because I've been doing this for about an hour and a half. We have a lot of people tuned in right now, which is great. I've been saying that the most important thing is going to be people watching these hearings, not just because like we need to find something new out about January 6th, but it puts pressure on the DOJ to actually move forward with indictments, because this kind of pressure will just, have that effect. And B, I think more people as we head into midterms can recognize like the importance of, what we're fighting against here. Somebody's saying induced labor. Bill Stepien was like, look, I know this baby's not cooked yet, but I need you to take one for the team here. We got to get me out of this thing. How would you like today to be our baby's birthday? Tracy said, show us the birth certificate. That's right, Republicans want proof that that baby was actually born. I know that's a big thing on the right. Someone asked, did DOJ fail to indict? DOJ hasn't failed to indict. They haven't done it yet. I think what we're waiting to see is, they're obviously working their investigation in conjunction with a lot of what we're hearing from the January 6th committee. I'm sure that they've used a lot of the tape depositions that we've seen from these administration officials. The January 6th committee has done over 1,000 interviews, and they have tens and tens and tens of thousands of documents. I'm sure the DOJ has access to any and all of that, working its way up to Trump. I think anybody with two eyes and 2 ears would recognize that it's moving slowly. I don't know if this is slower than normal, but in any case, all that I really care about at this point is that we do see some accountability. It looks like they're moving toward that. So, at this point, I'm just holding my tongue, and that's it. So again, we should hopefully see the beginning of this hearing in about 10 or 11 minutes. Hopefully, this hearing will begin. Slight delay because Bill Stepien wasn't able to be there today. That's Trump's former campaign manager. Will this be on demand later for people who miss it? Yes, this will be on my channel. Just check the live streams playlist and you'll be able to see this, and you can skip past all this stuff and go right to the hearing itself if you want to. After the DOJ is done, who gets Trump first, New York or Georgia? There are multiple investigations. When I spoke to Glenn Kirshner, who is a former federal prosecutor, he said that, no one wants to be the first to indict him, but once the first person does indict him, then we'll see an avalanche of other indictments. We obviously know that he has legal exposure in the Georgia case, and that is where he, told Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes. I believe it was the Fulton County DA came out and said that we should have some answer about that by June 30th. So I expect to have some movement in Georgia to find out whether or not he will be indicted in Georgia on or before June 30th. So that's 2 weeks from now. So these hearings will still be going on. We may have more answers from the DOJ in terms of more indictments that they've passed down. So a lot is going to happen in the coming weeks and months. All of it is going to happen in the coming weeks and months. Whether that's enough remains to be seen. But I expect that we'll see everything that we're expecting to see one way or the other. in the coming weeks and months. I actually did interview Glenn Kirshner. It's on my channel. If you're looking for an interview, Glenn had a ton of great information. So if you want to watch that interview, I spoke to him about what happens if Trump pardons himself, what happens, whether the pacing of this, what he expects to be seen in terms of the charges, whether we can expect Trump to be in a courtroom. I asked him all of those questions, so I would highly recommend go to the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel and check out my interview with Glenn Kirshner. And also, for people who've just joined, the committee hearing will start soon. The feed is in, so these committee hearings should start really any moment now. I expect within less than 10 minutes. So if you're here, stay put. This is finally beginning. And yes, it is actually on. Thank you. I know a lot of people are saying that they listened to my interview with Glenn Kirshner, so thank you if you watched that interview. Can Trump pardon himself? Someone asked. Trump can and likely did issue himself a pardon. Whether a pardon for his own criminal activity as it relates to January 6th would actually hold up in court is an entirely different story. So that would absolutely be challenged in court if he did, which I expect that he did. Many people expect that he did. So if he issued that pardon to himself, it is a certainty that would be challenged in court. For those who just tuned in, yes, no suit today. This is the uniform at 5 in the morning. That's I've been going for a little while. So I didn't think I could do a suit and tie for that long. Somebody just wrote, "You can't give yourself a pardon for criminally overthrowing your own government." I think that pretty much sums it up. And yes, he couldn't pardon himself for state crimes either. So he has legal exposure in Georgia for asking Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes. Any pardon that he would have given himself, not that the other ones I think would hold up, but any pardon also wouldn't apply in Georgia because that's a state crime, not a federal crime. Will Bill Stepien be testifying another day? I'm not sure if they're going to have him testify a different day. I know they have a legal representative for him testifying today. But I don't know if they're bringing him in at another time. And yes, 5 o'clock. Been doing this since 5 in the morning because I am on the West Coast. I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah, I need a sign on my sweatshirt that says "Yes, no suit today." Although I guess that's what a sweatshirt is. It's pretty much an advertisement that I'm not wearing a suit today. Can these trials lead to accountability from Fox? No. This is, I think anybody who knows Fox's role and complicity in this stuff is well aware of it. I don't expect that we'll veer into any of that though. Is this whole thing just to shame him like impeachment? No, the whole point is to actually A, put this in the public record, B, build pressure for the DOJ investigation by virtue of showing the American people what happened. I mean, this is a fact-finding mission. This is not just to shame him. This is so that we actually know what happened and can demand accountability based on the facts here. Also, back to CNN, they will have deposition from Bill Stepien. So even though he won't be able to testify, we'll see his taped deposition. Okay, we are expecting these hearings to begin in just a few minutes. So if you're tuned in, stay here. These will begin any moment now. For those of you just joining, I would just ask, the best way to support me and these live streams is to subscribe to my channel. So if you're not yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's free. I won't ask for money or anything like that, but that is the best way to subscribe to my channel. I'm keeping an eye on this video feed here, and as soon as they begin talking, I'll bring up the feed. Also, we have over 11,000 people watching. first thing on a Monday morning, that is great. And, I think it's so important to like make sure that people actually see what's going on. We have almost as many people watching on this stream right now as did a primetime hearing for this past Thursday's hearing. Oh, did I say the best way to subscribe is to subscribe? You guys gotta cut me some slack. I've been doing this I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning. But I'll stand by it. The best way to subscribe is to subscribe. I'll stand by that statement. Someone asked how long until this starts. I know people are just tuning in. It should start any second now. Any second now. There was a slight delay because Trump's former campaign manager, Bill Stepien, wasn't able to make it. So I'm sure that they're doing a little bit of reshuffling, but this committee should start, this committee hearing should start any second now. Yeah. Is Rudy filling in for Stepien? I'm sure he would love nothing more. I'm sure Rudy would love nothing more than to get that. If there's anybody more thirsty for attention than Donald Trump, it is Rudy Giuliani. Is this an all-day thing? No, I think we should probably expect maybe an hour and a half for this. Okay. It does say, yeah. It says the hearing begins at 11:45. So, a few minutes away. 15 minutes max. Is Lily asked, is fear of Trump's cult members' violence a reason for the lack of prosecution for Trump? No. No, I would highly doubt that, because that's like letting the terrorists win, so to speak. You can't refuse to indict somebody because you're afraid of, the demand set forward by those people who should be indicted. If anything, refusing to indict Trump would just embolden those people. So we have a vested interest in making sure that there's some accountability, because if political violence worked the first time, then these people are going to see, oh, all we have to do is ransack the Capitol and we get what we want. Or there's no accountability, and so, why not? So I think it would have the complete opposite effect. I think if there's anything pushing the DOJ to actually make sure that they hold him accountable and that we actually see some accountability, it's so that we don't see more political violence. It's to show that political violence won't achieve your ends that you're seeking. Thank you, by the way. I see some people are donating. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. The reason that they're 45 minutes late, 30 to 45 minutes late, is because Trump's campaign chairman, Bill Stepien, had a family emergency. ABC is reporting that his wife went into labor, so there's some last-minute changes that are happening right now. Darren asked, what kind of sentence should Trump get? Should or will? I actually don't know. I can't actually opine on it. I just don't have the legal expertise to be able to say, anything about sentencing. Here's what I'm most focused on: that we see some accountability where he isn't able to run for office. That's what I want to see. Do I expect to see Trump thrown in jail? Probably not. Do I expect it? What I hope and what I expect are two entirely different things. Do I expect to see Trump thrown into jail? No. But what I hope to see is that he's barred from running for federal office, because I think when you conspire to defraud the American people and commit seditious, if the charge is seditious conspiracy, I think that should preclude you from being able to run for office again. Somebody asked if this is hearsay, he said, she said. A lot of everything that the January 6th committee is bringing forward right now is all documented. It's under oath. The January 6th committee is not doing any of this. There's no conjecture here. There's no opining. It's all documented, which I think is funny, because the January 6th committee had said that Republican lawmaker Scott Perry had requested a pardon from Trump, and Scott Perry went onto Twitter and was like, "How dare you even suggest the very notion that I would request a pardon? That is a soulless lie," he said. If you look back to the clip where Liz Cheney actually said it, she said, "As you will see," and then went on to say that Republican lawmakers like Scott Perry had requested pardons from Trump. This committee has proof of that. And this idea that they're just going to stake the entire reputation of this committee and their 1,000 interviews and their tens and tens and tens of thousands of documents pouring over all of this stuff on just casually suggesting that that this random guy, this Republican lawmaker, asked Trump for a pardon with nothing to back it up is so like asinine. It's so backwards. I would stake anything on saying that yes, if the committee is saying that Scott Perry asked Trump for a pardon, that Scott Perry asked for Trump for a pardon. Okay, we're less than 10 minutes out at the latest. They said we can expect a start time between 10:30 Eastern and 10:45. Looks like the witnesses are there right now, so let me just pop the sound on. Looks like things are about to start momentarily. It looks like the witnesses are already there. So if you're watching right now, stay tuned because we are moments away. Wouldn't this be better viewed by the masses, not on a Monday when people are going to work? Yes, I mean, they did have, they had the primetime hearing. I think that they're just trying to save the primetime hearing so that it doesn't get, like, stale. I think there's going to be a number of these hearings. Of course, they'll cover this stuff again on, like, nightly news. So we'll hear about the important parts of these in primetime anyway. But I think that they're, making sure that the actual primetime hearings are the ones that are especially effective and don't kind of lose their effectiveness just by virtue of like being overexposed. Could these hearings lead to sitting members of Congress being removed from office? It's unlikely that these hearings are going to do that, but I think we'll find out a lot of the participation from these people. I mean, like I said, Scott Perry was reportedly requested a pardon. CNN has reported that Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, and Mo Brooks have all requested pardons as well. I spoke about this earlier in the stream, but like AOC went on Twitter and asked Matt Gaetz, who was harassing her about something, asked Matt Gaetz if he requested a pardon from Trump. And even though they'd been going back and forth, he miraculously stopped responding after the question was posed, did you request a pardon from Trump? Which I'm sure is just a coincidence. Brian, are your live YouTube and internet streams included in the 20 million viewer count? No, they're not. When I do these streams, those aren't included in like the Nielsen ratings. So that first day of hearings had 20 million viewers. That didn't include streaming. That didn't include internet numbers. On my stream, I had, I think, roughly 200,000 viewers. A lot of streams had more or less. So there were millions more than the 20 million that we got as preliminary figures. Yeah, Matt Gaetz had a family emergency in that moment. Elvin said. Yeah, that was reported that he asked for a blanket pardon as well. Why are they holding these hearings when they're not done with the investigation? So the DOJ will hold its own investigation. Congress doesn't have the ability to charge anybody, for example. But the DOJ will
live coverage this morning from the Canon.
Sorry, I'll bring that audio back in. It's just a commentator. So these committee hearings are important because they expose the American people to what happened. The DOJ isn't going to reveal any of this stuff. So the DOJ is conducting their own investigation, but we're not going to know whether, one thing or the next. We're not going to know any of the evidence that they're seeing. All of that stuff is done in private. These hearings are important because this is our view. This is our window into all of what they're investigating. That's why this is so important. We otherwise wouldn't. Without these hearings, we would just be sitting here on a daily basis wondering what the hell Merrick Garland is doing. Are those pardons recognized even after a president leaves office? So Trump could have given himself what's called a pocket pardon, or he doesn't have to reveal what pardons were given. Whether they're recognized will be up to a court. So if Trump is indicted and says, or if he's even charged and he says, you can't, doesn't matter, I've given myself a pardon, that's going to be up to the court to determine whether they can enforce that. Unlikely that they'll be able to. I mean, you can't conspire to defraud the United States of America and give yourself a pardon while doing it, while violating the Constitution. I wouldn't bank any money on Trump's pardon holding up if he got one, which I would expect that he did. make this hearing a little bit bigger here. We should expect the committee members to come in about 1 minute. Yes, a lot of approval for the nice transition swipes. Appreciate that. For people who are new, I know a lot of people are joining right now. Please subscribe. I'll be doing live streams of these hearings every time they happen. I also do my regular breaking news coverage. I do about a 5-minute video, usually once a day. I also have interviews every week. I'll be releasing two interviews this week. One is Fred Gutenberg, who's the parent of a Parkland shooting victim, and the other is with Dan Pfeiffer, who's the co-host of Pod Save America and was Obama's communications director. Really good interviews, both of them. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. That is the best way to support me. We now have the committee members walking in. So we're gonna get going here. At long last, thank you to people who've been here since the very beginning. Been a long morning. But we made it. Thank you. Okay. So, a ton of really good information there. I think most effectively was building on what we found out from day one of these January 6th committee hearings, which I think was the smartest move possible, is to continue to establish the idea that all of the people in Trump's inner circle, all of these senior administration officials, relentlessly, breathlessly explained to him that there was no fraud and that there was no path to victory for him. So last time we heard from people like Trump's campaign lawyer, Alex Cannon. We heard from Jason Miller, who was the senior Trump campaign spokesman. We heard from Bill Barr. We heard from Ivanka. This time we were joined by these people were joined by other people, including Justice Department officials now, who continue to reiterate those exact same claims. So every single time that Trump would move forward with one of these claims of fraud, he was doing so knowing that these claims had already been debunked by people in his own administration. There was one especially telling moment where Bill Barr explained to him, because he was saying that all the precincts in Detroit, there was fraud happening because all the votes were being transported in boxes to a different location, and how this was somehow evidence of nefarious behavior. And Bill Barr explained to him that there is centralized, that the counting in Michigan is centralized, that it doesn't happen at the individual precincts. And so Trump, ostensibly, if he was functioning, if all of his synapses were firing and he was taking in information as a sentient human being, you would recognize that he'd have understood that. And yet the very next day he went out and said, look what's happening in Detroit. There's ballot dumps, there's boxes being transported. So he knew all of this stuff, which shows his corrupt intent, because he was told the truth, in some cases just hours earlier. And yet he continued to perpetuate these claims that would then continue to incite people to ultimately, end up doing what they did on January 6th. But the big lie was being done not because Trump actually believed these claims to be true, because he had just been told that these claims were actually debunked. And so that's evidence of his criminal intent right there. I thought those were probably the most effective parts, is having these administration officials come in and debunk all of the stuff that he claimed was true, the stuff that we were hearing him come on TV and say. Some noteworthy quotes that I have is Bill Barr called early claims of election fraud bogus, silly, based on complete disinformation. Obviously, we've heard numerous times Bill Barr refer to these fraud claims as bullshit. Still, that didn't stop Trump from moving forward with these claims. Jared Kushner, on his efforts to undermine Trump's efforts to undermine the election results, Jared Kushner said, not the approach I would take. That's what he allowed himself to say. I think he's just trying to maintain his seat, some good seating at the Thanksgiving table. But what do you what do you say? I mean, this is Jared Kushner trying to hedge as well as he can. Ivanka did the same thing. I mean, they asked her under oath what she thought about Bill Barr's claims that the election fraud claims were bullshit, and she said, I appreciate that what he was saying was true, and I accepted it. So I'm sure we'll hear him lash out at Jared Kushner now. I also forgot what an absolute circus Giuliani and Sidney Powell turned this into, and I think we got some good insight here from Bill Stepien, who was Trump's former campaign manager, about the divide that happened within the administration, because he said, I was part of Team Normal, and he contrasted that with the Rudy faction of the Trump administration, which would just come out and spew whatever bullshit popped into their head, like whatever errant synapse fired in their brain, and they would just, words would fall out of their face about stolen election claims, you know, while his hair was dripping off. So, you know, you had those competing factions, and I think that as people like Bill Stepien and Bill Barr, who, by the way, are not heroes in all of this, I should just say, but while they stepped away, it kind of created that vacuum that was then filled by people like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell. And like, dear God, what raving lunatics these people actually were. And the fact that Trump had these people surrounding him were, you know, any just inkling of something that they could exploit as fraud, they would just say, and then Trump would dump it into the ether, and he would just compound it and compound it and compound it. And for these people out there who trust him, who are listening to him, it's not even the accuracy of these claims, because the claims were debunked immediately. I mean, even I was standing there saying, like, you know, when they would say there's more votes cast than people in Detroit, and like, all you have to do is look at the numbers. You just look at the population of Detroit, and then you look at the number of votes cast. Very clearly, there were not more votes cast than people in Detroit, but it was just the sheer volume of these accusations, and that was the point, right? It wasn't about actually proving any of these claims, but it was about feeding the narrative. Steve Bannon himself says the whole point of this stuff is to flood the zone with shit. And that's what they were trying to do. It's not about proving anything right, because they didn't actually stick by any of this stuff. They weren't like hanging on to the Detroit allegation, for example, until the bitter end, because as soon as it was debunked, they just moved on to the next one. It was about the narrative. It was about just getting any and all claims, because the volume, the quantity of these claims was the important part. And so that's why they were, you know, hanging on to this stuff. They would take completely unvetted, ridiculous, like laughably false claims, like the number of, like I was just saying about the number of people in a certain city versus the number of votes cast, and just throw it out there, because people aren't gonna look at this stuff. They're not gonna fact check. They're just seeing, you know, these Trump supporters are just seeing, well, I've heard 10 stories today. I heard 20 yesterday. I heard 30 the day before that. Man, there really must be fraud. And that was the whole point. It wasn't about the accuracy of any of this stuff. They didn't, like I said, they didn't take any of this stuff to the wall. Like, because as soon as it was debunked, they just move on to the next one. They have 5 more. It's like the Medusa head, right? It was, as soon as one's cut off, 10 more would sprout up. And so I think that was the point of all this. That's what they were really hoping for. It's not like any one individual claim. No claims of fraud were actually bore out. When they brought 60 court cases alleging, you know, a number of which alleged fraud, not a single one passed muster in court, including in front of a bunch of Trump-appointed judges. Even the Supreme Court wouldn't touch any of these claims of fraud. So there was actually no fraud, and not only was it disproven in those court cases, disproven by secretaries of state, disproven by recounts, disproven by audits, but it was disproven by the very people in Trump's inner circle who were telling him on a daily basis that none of these claims of fraud are legitimate. You have members of the DOJ, you have people like Bill Barr, Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, Trump's lawyers, Trump's spokespeople. Nobody in any of these depositions has said anything that would lend itself to the idea that what Trump was saying about fraud was actually legitimate. The only people that we've heard from that were actually echoing these claims are the lunatics like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, both of whom were like sued to the tune of billions of dollars for defamation for these exact claims. Are those the people you're gonna hang your hats on? Steyerwalt from Fox's election desk. I want to just bring up some quotes that I thought were super effective from his testimony. He said that Fox's decision desk was the best in the business, that's a quote, and that he was proud to have correctly called Arizona first among the networks for Joe Biden. He said, quote, "We have more research and we had a better system and we had a great team." So this guy was defending the accuracy of Fox's ability to call Arizona first, a call that was ultimately proved correct. The accuracy of that system that allowed him to call Arizona first, the fact that it was a unanimous call when Fox called Arizona for Joe Biden. Steyerwalt himself said that Trump's chances of winning the election after election night, quote, none. He also, then we had Bill Stepien, who was Trump's former campaign manager, in his tape deposition, because again, he couldn't be here. In his tape deposition, said, quote, "Votes were still being counted, that it was too early to call the race. The president disagreed with that. He thought I was wrong. He told me so." He also testified that it was far too early to be making any calls like that, referring to an election night victory. And of course, we know that Trump did declare victory on election night regardless. While Steyerwalt said that Trump had no chance of winning the election after election night, Bill Stepien basically corroborated that exact outlook. He said that chances were 5%. He said very, very bleak, not a very good or optimistic outlook. So I think all of this, I mean, just this constant reiteration over and over and over again from these witnesses testifying, I think is going to be so important, especially at the beginning, because what we are doing right now, what the committee is doing right, I say we like I'm here, like I'm sitting up there on the dais. What the committee is doing right now is just establishing the facts that Trump knew that there was no valid claims of fraud, and that there was no chance that he could win this election. And so what we're going to see subsequently in terms of what he knew from January 6th and the insurrection and these militia groups and everything, it was all done with criminal intent, in the sense that he knew everything he was saying was false. Again, he was told by Bill Barr, he was told by Ivanka and Jared, he was told by Jason Miller, he was told by his campaign lawyer, Alex Cannon. He was told by all of these people over and over and over again that what he was saying wasn't legitimate, wasn't based in anything, wasn't grounded in any reality or facts. And so everything that followed, all of his statements that followed, all the inciting of the insurrection that followed, it was all just bullshit, like Bill Barr said. And so I think that's especially effective to establish these facts right off the top. And again, as these hearings continue to move forward, we'll find out about the violence and how much they knew, and it'll prove that they had, conspired to defraud the American people. But, this is as effective as it gets when we have all these administration officials who basically are admitting that Trump knew the reality of the situation here. He knew the reality of the situation. He just opted not to tell his supporters the truth. Okay. If you have any questions, you can throw them here. Somebody had asked why I wouldn't call Bill Barr a hero. Bill Barr had done a number of things to obfuscate facts for Trump leading up to this. Just because he found that this one instance wasn't palatable for him doesn't mean that he didn't misrepresent the Mueller memo, the Mueller investigation report, for example, by basically doing that summary before he would allow the report to be released. Did a summary that said basically the polar opposite of what the report itself said. So no, I don't think Bill Barr is any hero here, and I don't think that the bar should be so low that just deigning to acknowledge objective reality is makes you some hero in all of this. So the committees come back in, and we should be resuming shortly. Okay, so that was that's day 2 of these January 6th hearings in the books. Just a few things that I think are especially important from this past hearing. What we saw from the first hearing that I thought was sorry, wrong button. What I saw from the first hearing that I thought was especially effective was bringing these Trump campaign officials, these Trump administration officials, the inner circle of Trump basically, and having them admit that they told Trump that there was no evidence of fraud, that there was no evidence that he could win the election, and kind of establishing those facts right off the bat, so that when they would then go on to show what happened on January 6th and all the carnage that ensued at that insurrection, it was all done. It was all incited by someone who knew better, and yet who opted to defraud people regardless, because he just wanted to try to manifest some election victory where there was none. That was the most effective part of what I saw in day one of those hearings. I think today they kind of brought more of that, and so it just kind of layered upon the effectiveness of day one, because we were able to see we were able to see DOJ officials this time. We were able to see the Philadelphia Commissioner Schmidt come forward and say that, again, all these people did was, if they weren't telling Trump himself that there was no credible claims of fraud, then they were coming in debunking whatever claims of fraud that were put forward by Trump. And it was just this, they had to work to kind of bat down this fire hose of just disinformation and bullshit that was being spewed relentlessly by these Trump folks. And this is what I was saying during that 10-minute break, is it wasn't really about the claims of fraud. Like that wasn't the principal issue here, because they didn't actually follow any of these claims. They didn't actually take them to the wall, because they knew none of them would stand up to even the mildest of scrutiny. The point was just to feed the narrative that there was fraud in this election. And if you look at that very last person who spoke, and he was the one who said that I voted, but I saw that Wi-Fi signal, and so I knew that it was online, or I voted, but definitely don't trust the software. That was the point of this. Those people were incited by this constant fire hose of claims that were put forward by Trump. Every time somebody brought some random claim to Trump, he'd repeat it. Not because he vetted it, not because he really thought that some truck driver had transported some tractor trailers worth of ballots from New Jersey to Pennsylvania or something like that. Not because any of these things were legitimate or would even stand up to even the mildest of scrutiny. The point was just to feed the narrative, to just keep this fire hose of bullshit spewing into their media ecosystem, to the point where those people who attended the January 6th insurrection would then come forward and say stuff like, oh yeah, well, I don't trust the ballots, I don't trust the software, Dominion voting systems, it's connected to the internet, our ballots are being changed, Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, China, bamboo fibers. That was the point of this. Again, there was no individual claim that was vetted or even would stand up to any scrutiny. The point was to just manipulate these people, to trick them, to exploit them into thinking that something was amiss. That's it. That's why they did so much. It is a tried and true tactic. Steve Bannon has come out and said that his strategy is to flood the zone with shit. That is exactly what Trump did. And these poor administration officials and DOJ officials are standing there saying, we've investigated this claim, we've investigated this, and they have to put so many resources because, there's just such a fire hose of shit coming toward them. They have to put so many resources toward investigating each individual one. And when they were in the Oval Office with Trump and talking to him and saying, sir, we investigated this, nothing panned out, we investigated this, Trump would just go right on to the next one, right on to the next one, right on to the next one. Not because he didn't push back on anything, because he didn't have any evidence to prove any of it. It wasn't about any individual claim. It was just, let's just keep getting more out there. Let's just keep getting more out there. And if I can trick enough people into thinking that something was wrong, just by virtue of saying, look what's happening in Michigan, look what's happening in Arizona, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, in Nevada, in New York, in New Jersey, in Detroit, just anywhere he can point to, it would make enough people, it would convince enough people, make enough people believe that something went wrong. And that's exactly what he did. All the while knowing that it was bullshit, because he had people like Bill Barr, he had people like Jason Miller, Jared Kushner, Ivanka, telling him behind the scenes that these claims of fraud were bullshit. All the while. And so he knowingly defrauded this country. He had corrupt, criminal intent while doing it, because he knew the truth. but he wanted to win. He wanted to rig the election so badly that he opted to lie, even though he was told the truth. He was told that one time in Detroit when he said, "Oh, well, they're bringing ballots from from all these separate precincts. They're transporting ballots," and he was told by an elections official that they don't have centralized counting in Michigan at these. That they do have centralized counting in Michigan. That they don't have individual counting at the precincts. And the very next day, Trump went out and talked about ballot harvesting again, even though he was just told the truth. The intent was corrupt. And that's what they'll be able to prove over and over and over again by showing not only all of these people in his inner circle who were telling him the truth, and he opted not to listen, but also hearing from the people who attended the insurrection on January 6th that they bought exactly what he was selling. That they listened to those lies, and those lies are what incited them to show up, because they were so convinced that all of those lies were true, because there were so many. How could you possibly have this many instances and one not be true? That's what they thought. They heard so much of this like fire hose of bullshit getting sprayed at them on a daily basis that they had no choice but to believe him. And I believe them. I believe those people were manipulated. But I don't believe the fact that Trump actually believed his own election lies, because everybody around him in that orbit, other than Rudy Giuliani with his head dripping, with his hair dripping down his face, or Sidney Powell, and I mean, that woman is not even palatable for the most extreme people on the right. So God knows that Trump looked at her and he was like, yeah, not so sure about that one. He did it with corrupt intent from the very beginning. So with that said, I will host another live stream on Wednesday. Again, if you want to be reminded about that live stream, please subscribe to this channel. That is the best way to support my work, is just to hit the subscribe button. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe and you'll be notified Wednesday morning. I'll start this live stream at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. So bear with me here on another early one. But you know what's crazy about this is I had more people watching on this stream than even the primetime one. So initially, this idea, that the right was putting forward, that nobody was going to watch these hearings because we all knew what happened on January 6th, blah, blah, blah. It drew 20 million people, and that was just in Nielsen ratings. That didn't include any internet or any streaming numbers, which of course, added millions to that total. I had almost 250,000 just on my stream alone on Thursday. And this one too, I mean, I think I had 17,000 on the first stream. I had 20,000 on this stream. So people are still paying attention. There's irrefutable evidence being presented right now. We have a number of Trump administration officials and inner circle members who are coming out and testifying under oath the truth, that they explained to Trump that there wasn't any fraud and there was no way that he could win the election. We had quotes like none, 5%, like it wasn't gonna happen. And just establishing these facts and this foundation that everything that followed these conversations was being done fraudulently. Every time Trump went out, got on TV and said, fraud here, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, that it was all being done knowing full well that what he was saying wasn't true. So, and just remember that all of this is being done in conjunction, these testimonies, these depositions, these documents that are being collected by the January 6th committee. The DOJ has all of this. These investigations are running concurrently. I mean, we're lucky enough that these January 6th hearings give us some insight, some exposure into what the DOJ would have insight into privately, because we wouldn't hear anything about the DOJ investigation. But not only does this kind of assist that DOJ investigation, but it gives us the ability to not only watch it, but exert some pressure on the DOJ then as they move toward what I hope will be some type of criminal indictment for Trump and his loyalists who executed this scheme. And obviously, the Republican officials who helped him know that they have legal exposure too, because the committee admitted a few days ago that Scott Perry came forward, a Republican lawmaker, and had asked Trump for a pardon. He, of course, denied it, but Liz Cheney said, on Thursday's hearing that as we will show Scott Perry asked President Trump for a pardon, so like they have the receipts. That is not something I would want to stake my reputation on, as being the person to say that the January 6th committee is lying, because I think if there's any committee that knows that they have to be absolutely foolproof, it's this one. And of course, CNN reported that Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, and Mo Brooks had also requested pardons. Here's the thing. Generally, and I'm no genius on this area, but generally, if you request a pardon, it's probably because you think you've done something wrong. These people, with all their tacit admissions of guilt by virtue of requesting these pardons, knew exactly what they were doing, because on the inside, behind the scenes, away from the Fox News cameras and the OAN cameras and the Newsmax cameras and their little rallies and whatnot, they all knew that they were perpetuating a lie, that they were defrauding the American people, and that none of their fraud claims or any other claims of election subversion or whatever held up to even the mildest of scrutiny. Again, they had the opportunity to present these in every court in the country, including in front of a number of judges who Donald Trump himself appointed. Not a single fraud claim was proven. And it wasn't proven in front of any of these Republican secretaries of state either, or these Republican governors, or state legislatures, or recounts or audits, all of which confirm the original counts. So they had every opportunity in the world to litigate the living shit out of this stuff, and at no point could they prove even one of their claims. That should be telling enough. So with that said, I'll end it there. Again, please subscribe to this channel if you're not yet subscribed. I hope to see you join on Wednesday morning for the day 3 of these hearings. But yeah, throw me a subscribe, and I'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching. I know that there's a ton of places you can watch, so I appreciate you joining this stream, and hope it was helpful. And thanks again.